Hi, everybody. Welcome to Financially Savvy. The program's called Get Dibs on Your Crib, where we're going to be talking about online off-campus housing. So I'm sure a lot of you all have questions about that. And today we have the honor of having 3 different departments with us. So this program is part of ILead as well. And so we have Sam from CSI here with us, and we have Jessica, Marissa, and Stephanie here from the Basic Needs Resource Center, as well as John Carlos Senior from Student Legal Services. And so I'll go ahead and move it forward to Sam, who's going to talk a little bit about ILead and segue it to the rest of our hosts.
Thank you, Zara, for that introduction. So hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Champy, and I am the representative from Communication and Leadership with our ILead program. And so I'm going to go ahead and just quickly share my screen so that you can see the ILead requirements. And so again, just quick reminders. You will get credit if you're part of the ILead program for this. You'll get 1 stamp at the end as long as you stay for the entire duration of the workshop. And then at the end, I'll go ahead and give you a Google form to complete. It takes less than 2 minutes to complete. And then you'll receive a virtual confirmation email with that 1 stamp. Something that I will add that is new is that if you happen to get if your internet is kind of like tricky and you get kicked out of this workshop, then please email the CCL at ucsc.edu immediately, and we can go ahead and let you back in because I'm aware that sometimes some students are getting kicked out and cannot come back in. And so yeah, that is all I basically have for ILead. I'm going to be here for the entire workshop, and at the end, for the last 5 to 10 minutes, I'll give you all the link to complete that and stay on for questions. So thank you all for being here. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and pass it back to our Basic Hub Needs interns.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Stephanie.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm currently a 3rd year at the Basic Needs Hub, and I'm a Basic Needs peer educator.
I'm Marissa. I'm also a Basic Needs peer educator, a 2nd year global health major.
Hello everyone, I'm Jessica and I am also another peer educator, and I am a 4th year with a global health major as well.
Okay, so I can share my screen. Can everyone see my screen okay? Okay. So to start this presentation, it's just the basics of how to move off campus. So there are some things you will have to do. So identify your budget, and that means just be realistic with yourself about what you can and cannot afford. Save money for a deposit and rent. This is because a deposit is the way you tell the property that this is your place and that you will be moving in. That way it can be taken off the market. And save money for the rent, because even if you do get money from financial aid or your parents, it's always nice to have it saved up. That way you don't have anxiety or issues about it later down the road. And if, for example, if you lose a job or something, at least you know that you have that month's rent covered until you find a new job. Also, give yourself plenty of time to start looking for a place. The timeline will be different depending on what you personally want, but most people start looking early spring quarter. Then also prioritize your needs instead of your wants. Make sure that your needs come before your wants, because you're living off campus so that you can have a place to still come to school for. So obviously the most important thing is to have access to school. So if you're going to be a bus commuter, make sure to have a bus stop nearby, or if you're going to be commuting with your car, make sure that your place has parking so that you're not always struggling to find parking on the streets. And then lastly, consider who you want to live with, current roommates or friends. And then leasing information. So the application fee can be required to start the leasing process. This is perfectly legal. Some places will require it and some won't. It depends. Leasing offices can run credit checks as well. If you don't have a credit score yet, or if you feel that it's not good enough, you can always ask a co-signer to come in. So a parent, an aunt, a family member, someone that trusts you and that you trust, because again, they are liable for the fact that you may not be able to pay rent. There's also month-to-month leases, 6-month leases, 9-month or year-long leasing contracts. Consider which one is best for you. Do you want to be here just for the school year? If that's the case, 9-month is best. But if you want to be here for longer than that, then maybe a year one would be best. Again, the security deposit will be needed to secure the unit, so make sure you have that available. And then once the leasing contracts end, make sure to notify the leasing officer or landlord 30 days in advance. That way they can know whether you want to stay in the property or whether you will leave. That way they can make adjustments if necessary. And then once you do leave the property, you should get your security deposit back. If for any reason you don't, it is legally, they have to write down why and what it was used for, if anything. And then once off campus, read your lease. This is important because you need to familiarize yourself with what is allowed, what is not allowed. Are there any penalties for late rent? What are the policies on rent payment and repair policies? Also, know your rights as a tenant. It's important to just familiarize yourself with what the law protects you from and what is not protected from you. So definitely check in on that. Then set up responsibilities within your house. So who's gonna set up the SDGE account for water, gas, and bill, and electricity. Also your Wi-Fi bill, because we are in school, so the Wi-Fi is an essential. And then establish house rules and roommate rules. Cleanliness, visitors, quiet hours. Even if this seems like it's not a big deal, it's better to just talk about this openly. That way you all know what you expect from each other. So do you mind if the dishes pile up or not? Do you mind if visitors come or not? And do you want quiet hours the way they are set up in the dorm?
So as previously mentioned, the first step of searching for a roommate is considering if you want to live with friends or people you found through online, such as the off-campus housing website, which I will go into later, or your career that applies to you. So you want to think about compatibility. So that's stuff like sleeping habits, if they are a night owl or if they wake up early, that's obviously super important. And then how clean are they? Like if they clean their room often or they leave stuff piling up, that's something else to consider. And then habits such as like if they like to go out and party or they're more of a homebody, and also study habits are all really important things to keep in mind in terms of compatibility. And then you also want to narrow down your options, possibly meet up with them one-to-one to get a better feel of how they are face-to-face, because you won't always get a good sense of how that person is through social media. So if you meet with them in person, then you can take the time to ask them any questions you didn't get to ask through Facebook or through text message. And the last step is to choose your roommate or roommates wisely after having analyzed your options carefully.
And then for the roommate agreement, the goal of this is just to minimize as much future conflicts, tensions, or issues as possible. So make sure to set up rules and boundaries. This goes not only for roommates that you're sharing the actual room with, but as well as the whole house members. So break down shared space as evenly as possible. So the refrigerator, cabinets, closets. This might seem like something super simple, but a lot of people forget. And if there are any tensions later on down the line, the fact that these issues weren't talked about, it can lead to just like an increase in tension. So try to minimize that discuss your routines again, like Marisa said. Are you a morning person or night owl? Talk about it, even if you feel like it won't be an issue, because it's better to just have a clear understanding of what you each expect of each other as roommates and as people sharing one home. And again, cleaning schedules, room and bathroom. Just make sure that whatever you decide with works for both of you. And if you do end up thinking that, oh, I don't like this cleaning schedule, just talk about it again and change it. That way it's good for both of you.
So here are some platforms to search for housing. The first being the off-campus housing website, and I will go into more detail on that in the next slide. But other options are the Facebook public groups, and there public group email as a way to ensure safety. And then also there's the UCSD ULoop website, as well as the College Student Apartments website, which are two other safe options to look for housing. And the PadMapper, Jessica will get into it in a bit. As for the off-campus housing website, it's also solely for UCSD. And it ensures optimal safety as well as authenticity. Is that the housing website can be used, one being to list your property, and that can be like a house or apartment, anything like that, without a hassle. There's like tutorials to get you through what steps you need to take. You can also search for housing, and you can adjust your preferences by how much you are looking to spend, or if you want a house or an apartment, as well as the area, anything like that that are specifics. And as mentioned before, you can also search for roommates through the website. And these are just UCSD students, of course, because this website is just for UCSD affiliates, as I had mentioned. And you can also review your rent, which is the fundamental process. And when there are resources for commuters that are really important, such as the campus shuttle or parking information, affordable grocery stores, and more.
So just to give you another example of what is available to you, PadMapper is another great platform to find housing. Just like the off-campus housing website, it is also very convenient to utilize, and it has different filters to adjust the preferred amount of rent depending on your budget, or if you have any other type of preferences, such as the housing. For example, there are options such as studios, houses, individual rooms, among other types. And then you can also select what properties you're looking for, if you're looking for a short term or a long term. And also if, for example, you have a pet and you're looking for a house for housing that allows pets, and other filters as well. And then another really great feature that PadMapper has is that all the available properties are displayed in a map, and then you're able to see and zoom in into the property to see what it looks like around and to see what stores are available, just so that you get a better idea of what would be best for you. And then talking about timelines for moving, it is very important to emphasize that the sooner that you start looking for housing, the better it will be, because then you will not be stressing out and rushing to find a new place. Like Stephanie and Marisa were explaining, it is also very important to keep in mind different factors, such as what are your options and if you have any preferences. For example, if you're planning to live with friends, or if you will be looking for a place and you also need to find roommates. Other things to consider are, for instance, whether or not you will need to live close to school or close to your workplace. And right now, in light of everything that is happening due to COVID-19, maybe you will not be required to live as close to your workplace or school. So this would mean that you could live somewhere that is farther, but that renting is more affordable. And then it is also important to think about your preferences. For example, like I was talking about the type of residence, if you have any preferences regarding that, or is there like a region or a specific location that you would like to live in, and what type of stores are around, just to make sure that it's convenient for you to go grocery shopping, for example. So at the very minimum, we would say that it's preferable to leave 1 to 2 months beforehand, like right before your lease ends, just so that you give enough time to allow for considering other factors, such as preventing any possible gaps between the both leases, because then depending on your situation, it may be difficult to find somewhere to stay within that gap, or just to make sure that both leases don't overlap greatly. And it is also good to leave enough time to contact the properties that you're interested in to get more information if needed, or to schedule an appointment to review any properties that you're interested in, just to make sure that they fit your preferences. Also, it's important to keep in mind that you will need to fill out applications, and some properties, depending on the type of residence, they may require a background check or other requisites. So keep in mind that that also may take some time to process. And also take into consideration that you need to allow time to move out and move into the new place, just to make sure that you're not like stressing out and rushing. And now there have been a lot of changes in our lives, especially with work and school, just to follow interventions such as social distancing to flatten the curve and stay safe. And in light of all of this, a lot of students have decided or are thinking about moving back home or have changed their living situations. However, it is important to keep in mind that COVID-19 breakout is not likely to be a reason to end the lease. Of course, there are some exceptions. For example, if the tenant has been directly infected by COVID-19, or if the tenant is at great risk of getting infected based on the living situation where she or he is in. And of course, this will be more of a legal topic, so we don't really deal with this. Our friends from the legal services would be more the experts to talk about this. And then other things to keep in mind is that a lot of people are truly being affected by all of these changes. So another option would be to talk with your landlord. Maybe you could reach an agreement with her or him, just to see, for example, if there are like any other type of options that you have available. And also, in light of all the changes with school, a lot of students are subletting their apartments or their rooms, which basically means that someone would take over your rent for the lease contract that you had. But keep in mind that the person subletting is still the responsible one, because, for example, you will be the original tenant. And then it is also important to have an agreement with the new tenant, just to make sure that he or she follows any set of rules. And very importantly, like Stephanie was explaining, to follow the room agreement. And then here's our contact information. Let us know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for listening to us. And then we really hope that you're staying safe and healthy, and that things are going smoothly with you.
Okay, so maybe Zara, were you going to say something, or should I wait momentarily?
Go ahead and take it away, John Carlos.
Okay, all right. Well, that was excellent, and I think a really good sort of overview of what to expect over the coming months. My name is John Carlos Sr. I'm an attorney, and I'm the director at Student Legal Services. So my office provides free confidential counseling, education, and referrals on all types of legal matters. The single biggest issue that we see at Student Legal Services, doesn't matter what time of the year, is landlord-tenant law matters, questions, tenants' rights, security deposits, issues between roommates. So this is definitely something that that I talk about a lot. We can help students with any and all other questions and issues too, but frankly, the one issue that is predominating is landlord-tenant law and what's happening in terms of the virus. And I might as well take an opportunity to speak just a little bit about that. The truth is that nobody really knows what's happening or what to expect. The courts are currently closed for all types of matters. They're hoping to open May 1st, at least here in San Diego County, so on Friday, but there's actually going to be an address tomorrow where they're going to discuss what they're going to do about that. A lot of things are on hold that would normally be going forward right now. So it is also with leasing. It's kind of difficult to know what to expect or what the best choices are when it comes to renting for next year. You might have already seen the email earlier today from the Chancellor's office discussing that, yes, there's an anticipation that the class will be some in person and some online in the fall. Again, I think we're probably not going to know a lot for another month or two. But in the meantime, there are certainly some things you can do to be proactive about living on or off campus. I'm not sure if the date has already passed for committing to live on campus, but those of you who have, that were living on campus up until spring break at least, know that the university was flexible in terms of letting folks out of their lease early if they wanted to and if they needed to. That has not really been the case with students who have been living off campus in terms of off-campus rents. Those who signed leases are still obligated to continue to pay until the end of the lease. There have been some exceptions made. Some landlords have been a little more flexible than others in terms of letting folks out early, but generally there has not been a law passed, nor has there been an executive order from the state or federally that would allow students or tenants to terminate their leases early or forgiving lease obligations. In other words, people still owe under their lease terms until the end of the lease, unless an agreement is reached otherwise. So sort of following up on what some other folks, what the other presenters talked about, yes, in terms of the order of things chronologically, typically the first thing that folks do when they're looking for a place is to tour a place, and of course at some point, if they decide that they find a place they like, they will fill out an application. Typically on the lease application, there'll be a request for the tenant's social security number. And the reason for that is that social security number is used to run a credit check. So for students, of course, who've lived on campus, and before that they were back at home with their parents, they may not have a particularly lengthy credit history. So one thing that you can do is, first off, you should go to annualcreditreport.com, annualcreditreport.com, all one word. That is a website that is basically approved by the federal government, the Federal Trade Commission, and that's where you can actually request a free copy of your credit report once every 12 months from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies. So there are 3 basically private companies that that monitor credit for folks. So it's so Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And once every 12 months, you are entitled to a free copy of your credit report from each of the 3 different credit reporting agencies. They generally will look similar in terms of information, in terms of what they identify, and but they will vary slightly. And so what some students will do is they'll order one copy from one company, and then they'll wait 4 months and then request a copy from another company, wait 4 months and then request one from the third company, and then just keep doing that to space it out so they're not asking for more than one every 12 months from each of the credit reporting agencies. One other thing that you can consider doing if you don't have a lengthy credit history is you can think about maybe, well, first off, you might want to open a bank account if you don't have one, and you might even want to consider getting a debit card and maybe even a credit card that has, for example, a very limited credit limit. So maybe $100 or $500 or $1,000, just as long as you continue to pay that every, that you pay it off completely. That's how you build credit. So you make one charge on your credit card and then you pay it off at the end of that month. Basically, that's how you do it. So I would suggest that you consider doing that. There are other services that offer the ability to monitor credit, and there are services that offer the opportunity to get your credit score. And as I said previously, you are entitled to a copy of your credit report, but that's a little different from your credit score. The credit score is sort of an aggregate 3-digit number that's supposed to basically summarize in one 3-digit number what your credit worthiness is, whether you are trustworthy to be given money to. And of course, this is why landlords run credit checks. They want to make sure that their tenants are able to pay every month. There are a couple services that offer free credit monitoring and offer free credit scores. So, for example, Credit Karma, as one individual asked, and Credit Sesame. There are a couple other ones. The one thing that we sort of caution with that is if they're not charging you money, they still have to make money. And so if they're not charging you, what they're probably doing is, as part of signing up for, say, Credit Karma or Credit Sesame or whatever, as part of signing up with it, you're agreeing to allow that company to sell your personal information to banks and credit card companies so that they can in turn offer you credit card offers and that sort of thing. So those are the things you get in the mail that you didn't ask for, but say, hey, do you want to sign up and get this great new credit card? So yes, Credit Karma works, but understand that if as we say, they're selling you if you're not paying them directly. So yes, you do have the opportunity to get a co-signer or a guarantor. Basically means the same thing when you're signing a lease. So a lot of students have difficulty proving that they have large incomes when they're working or when they're in school, since of course you're in school. So what that means is that sometimes landlords will request or require that students get a co-signer or a guarantor, someone to sign on to the lease. And what that basically means is that whoever does that parent or guardian typically is agreeing to be financially responsible in the event that their student is unable to pay the rent. But it goes actually well beyond that. And one of the rules that students discover when they live off campus is, it's called joint and several liability. And that's a fancy way of saying that each tenant is jointly and separately responsible for the entirety of the lease obligation. So that includes the monthly rent, that includes the condition of the place. So what that means is, under joint and several liability, that there's no such thing, at least under California law, as, say, a tenant having shares of the rent. You know, that tenant one pays $500 and tenant two pays $500. Under the law, the landlord is entitled to $1,000 if that's, you know, the monthly rent, and it doesn't matter which tenant it comes from. Now, the tenants can come to an agreement by way of a roommate agreement saying, okay, this is how much each person's going to pay. But under the law and under the rule of joint and several liability, the landlord is entitled to sue everybody if it's only one roommate who's not paying the rent. If another roommate has a pet and there's a no pet policy, everybody on the lease can get in trouble. If another roommate has overnight guests and there's a maximum number of guests that or nights that somebody can stay over, I'll see in leases that somebody can't stay more than 3 days consecutively or more than 2 weeks in any 3-month period or things like that. If those are violated by another roommate, everybody can get in trouble. And the reason why I bring that up is because under joint and several liability, what that means is that if you're living off campus and your roommate doesn't pay next month's rent, not only is your roommate going to get possibly get sued for it, you will as well, and so will anybody who's signed on as a co-signer or a guarantor. So keep that in mind. I try to discourage, whenever I talk to parents, I kind of discourage them from agreeing to be co-signers, because again, they're agreeing to be financially responsible and they don't even get the benefit of actually living in the place. The worst example, and I hope this doesn't scare you too much, but the one case that I will always remember is the case of a student's mom, who's basically the student's roommate burned the house down, and mom is getting sued as well as everybody else, because we lawyers, we sue everybody, and it doesn't matter, whoever can pay pays. So that's why it's important to, number one, maybe don't get a cosigner. The landlord can require it, but and if you really want to live in the place, then you got to make that decision. But of course, number two, make sure that you know your roommates well and that you all get along. One thing I definitely recommend that you do is consider using a roommate agreement, as was suggested in a previous slide by one of my fellow presenters. If you go to our homepage, Student Legal Services, so SLS, Student Legal Services, sls.ucsd.edu, and you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, there are a few hyperlinks, and one is to sample legal forms and agreements. You can find one there for roommate agreement, and you can customize that, and it sort of spells out things that were kind of previously discussed: how much each person's paying in rent, how much each person paying in security deposit, and who's doing the dishes, and who's doing the shopping, and who's putting what utilities and whose name, all that sort of thing. So feel free to look at that. At the very least, have a conversation with your roommate or your prospective future roommate. Talk about the roommate agreement, and make sure that you all are on the same page, and that you know that you can live with them, and you can trust that they're going to continue to pay the rent every month, for example, and they're going to that they'll have similar habits when it comes to cleanliness or having guests or that sort of thing. One other thing that I always recommend students also consider is getting renter's insurance. So renter's insurance, some landlords will require it, others won't, but I would suggest that no matter what, try to get renter's insurance and get good insurance that covers you in the event that anything happens, anything goes wrong at the place. So that can include coverage for your personal property in case it gets lost or damaged or stolen, coverage for any damage to your apartment unit or other units or other locations, and can even cover you in case there's like a big problem. Let's say that there's a flood and the landlord has to come in and rip up the floors, and you're not able to live in the place for a few days. So that's one type of coverage that you can get under renter's insurance. I don't have a particular company to recommend or anything, but I'd say number one, if you have a car, you might want to talk to your auto insurance to see what kind of policy they provide. If you have a You might even ask if your parents own their homes, you might want to ask if you can be added to their insurance policy. Not all insurance, homeowner insurance policies will cover children of homeowners if those folks are, if you're living off campus, but it's at least worth a conversation. There's mention here of lemonade insurance, and I know a couple of properties that actually suggest lemonade. I don't love lemonade insurance because I've actually seen some students denied what I thought were pretty good claims. It's very minimal in terms of the coverage, and a lot of the landlords will require a particular kind, that's the base minimum. And in fact, when a landlord requires a particular type of coverage, it really only covers them. So you might want to spend additional, a little bit of extra money per month just to cover you for, to expand that coverage to include, for example, floods, which wouldn't otherwise be covered, to cover mold, which wouldn't otherwise be covered. So get the best insurance you can possibly afford. I really, really recommend that. Two other things that I definitely want to mention before my time is up. Number one, yes, if you're planning to live in a place, understand that you are bound to the lease agreement. And there's not a ton of California law when it comes to landlord-tenant stuff. It's typically governed by contract law. And so what that means is that you need to understand what the terms of the contract that you're signing are. And Student Legal Services is open all summer, and open now, even though I'm at home. But you can make an appointment with us now and anytime this summer to talk and just sort of go over your lease, answer any questions you might have. If you're signing a lease and there's no early termination option, which some places will allow, but others don't, you're agreeing to be bound until the end of the lease term. One possible exception to this is some leases will allow you to sublet or assign your place. So a sublease or an assignment, those are basically ways where you find someone to replace you, they move in, you move out, they pay the rent while you're not there. And by the way, the difference between an assignment and a sublet or a sublease is a sublease or a sublet is temporary. So maybe you find someone to replace you for a few months over the summer, you move out, they move in, they pay the rent, and at the end of the summer, they moved out, you move back in, and then you continue paying rent. An assignment is where you find someone to replace you, so you move out, they move in, but then they stay for the rest of the lease term. So it's actually an assignment that a lot of folks these days are trying to look at to get folks to take over their leases until the lease ends. Most leases either say that you're not allowed to do this at all, that you're not allowed to sublet or assign at all, or you're only allowed to do it if you get the landlord's prior written permission. And so understand that if you do plan, if you want that flexibility, you are going to want to find out if you're allowed to assign or sublet the place. So keep that in mind. The last thing that I want to make sure to bring up is the number one issue, which we see at Student Legal Services, which is with respect to security deposits. So a security deposit, and if you know this if you live on campus or off right now, a security deposit is an amount of money that you pay at the beginning of the lease, and that your landlord is supposed to hold on to until the end of the lease term. And then at the end of the lease, they're supposed to give it back to you. And of course, they can charge you for certain things. So for any unpaid rent, for cleaning or repairs, for damages caused during the term of the lease. And that's basically it. So what that means is that your responsibility as tenants is to leave the place as you found it. So in other words, if you move in September 1st and you move out the next year on August 31st, your job is to leave it in the same condition as you found it the year before. And that can be a little difficult to prove because it's a year long. And so we have kind of a trick that it's not really a trick, but it's sort of our recommendation for how you can handle this sort of a thing. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully I'm doing this correctly. Here we go. So first off, as I said previously, here is the what did I do? So first off, here's the introductory page in terms of security deposits, which, as it suggests, are heavily regulated by California law. And to me, that's a good thing. If that means there are protections available for you. Those are different from holding deposits. A holding deposit is an amount of money that you pay before the lease starts, that you pay that the tenant pays the landlord, and the landlord basically takes that money, holds on to it, and then when it's time to sign the lease, then you sign it, and then the landlord will keep the money. So the idea for the holding deposit is basically the tenant pays the landlord, and in exchange the landlord agrees not to rent the place to anybody else. And then when it's time to sign the lease, the landlord keeps that money as long as they held up their end of the bargain. In other words, didn't rent to anybody else. And what that means is that holding deposits can be non-refundable. In other words, if you pay the landlord and they do their side, they hold up their end of the deal, then you're not going to get that money back. A lot of landlords, though, actually will apply that holding deposit amount to rent for the first month. A security deposit is different, as you can see there. Under the law, there should be no such thing as non-refundable security deposits. We'll see this occasionally where landlords will try to charge a cleaning fee, an automatic cleaning fee, that sort of a thing. The law strictly forbids any portion of a security deposit from being non-refundable, automatically non-refundable. In other words, you have the right to get all of your security deposit back if you return this place in the same condition as when you moved out as when you moved in. There is a maximum amount that landlords can charge when it comes to security deposit, and that amount is twice the monthly rent for an unfurnished place, or 3 times the monthly rent for a furnished place. And then, as was mentioned previously, the landlord has to give you your security deposit back within 21 days of you moving out. And if they keep any of your security deposit, they have to give you an itemized statement listing any deductions that they plan to take from your security deposit for. This is the single biggest, most important slide that I have to offer. That, again, our biggest issue is security deposits. And the best thing that you can do is to document the condition of your place when you move in and do the same thing when you move out. So what we recommend is you take pictures of everything. We suggest you actually go to CVS or Rite Aid or whatever, print out, and so take pictures before you move a single stick of furniture in. Take pictures of everything, go to print them out at CVS or Rite Aid or whatever, and then go to the post office and mail those pictures to yourself at your new address. And hey, that might be the first piece of mail you get. Exciting. And as long as you don't open the envelope, it'll have the date stamped for when you sent it, and that'll be basically perfect proof, like a time capsule of the condition of the place when you took pictures and when you sealed the envelope and mailed it because of that date stamp. So this is kind of how we recommend it. Yes, you can do a video. Yes, you can email pictures to yourself. But the reason why we suggest this is in the event that you have to go to court, and I hope you never have to go to court over this, but if you do, that's the best way to prove the condition of the place, is to show up with a sealed envelope full of pictures. The other thing two other things you want to absolutely make sure to do. Number one, as was previously recommended, definitely notify your landlord in writing at least 30 days before the end of the lease term. Even though the lease might say this lease ends on July 1st, a lot of leases require that you have to notify them at least 30 days before July 1st, so June 1st, and you have to notify them in writing saying, I plan to move out at the end of the lease, and this is my written notice of that. The other thing that you want to make sure to do is request a pre-move out inspection. So of course there's a move-in inspection, and you should use, like, the day you move in, and in addition to taking pictures, you should also fill out a form where you basically, as in a written piece of paper, where you write down, you make sure to mark down any problems with the place so that you don't get charged for any damage that pre-existed you're moving in to the place. This happens also all the time. So make sure that you fill out one of those move-in inspections. And if you, by the way, if you go to our website at sls.ucsd.edu, the only thing of substance that we talk about on our homepage is how to protect your security deposit, because again, this is the biggest issue that we see. So if you go to the under the paragraph "Protect Your Security Deposit," you'll see that there's a hyperlink to basically an inspection checklist. So if your landlord doesn't provide you one, you can get one there and just print it out and bring it with you the first day that you move in. And you do actually, if you had that, or if you go to that link now, you can see that there are three columns. One is for the basically the move-in inspection. One column is for the final inspection, and the law doesn't really talk about what tenants' rights are with respect to the final inspection, but it does talk about a sort of pre-move-out inspection. It talks about under the law in its Civil Code section 1950.5, if you're dying to know, that Civil Code section talks about an initial inspection. I don't like the language because initial sounds like the first, but really what it is a pre-move-out inspection. So basically you have the right to go through the place with your landlord, for the landlord to identify any problems to the place, and to give you a notice in writing of what they plan to deduct from your security deposit for. The reason why this is so important, and the reason why you want to make sure to do this initial inspection, is it limits what the landlord can charge you for. So as long as you do this pre-move-out inspection, let's say the landlord identifies in the course of that inspection, says, identifies three things, clean this, fix that, and do that. They cannot subsequently charge you for anything other than those three things, so long as you do that pre-move-out inspection. If you don't do the inspection, if you don't have time, you got it's midterms, finals, whatever, you miss that, then there's no sort of limit on what the landlord can charge you for in terms of the security deposit. So make sure that you request that pre-move-out inspection, and make sure that you do that pre-move-out inspection. The very last thing I promise I'll say is, when it comes to repairs, another big issue that we see, make sure that you notify your landlord in writing. Again, it all comes down to getting things in writing and documenting things. So make sure that you notify the landlord as soon as there are any issues or problems, and make sure that you can prove that you notify the landlord by keeping a copy of the email or of the piece of paper that you submit to the leasing office with the maintenance or repair request, that sort of a thing. If you don't notify them immediately and the problem gets worse, you can actually be held responsible for any subsequent damage because you didn't report it on time. So make sure to do it. I think that's probably it. Maybe I know that Zada, you're going to come in, and I see your face there. Hello. I will just put up my contact information. No, the landlords are not all evil, but there are some who are, but they do keep me in business. Okay, I'm done now. Thank you, Zada.
Thank you, John Carlos, and thank you to Marissa, Stephanie, and Jessica for providing us a very informative presentation about the process of moving off campus and how to lease off-campus housing. And so we have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has any, feel free to put them on the chat group, or you're welcome to turn on your audio, and we can answer those questions for you all. So I'll give maybe a few minutes. Folks want to type them in the chat.
Hi, I have a question about securing a lease, like how far in advance you can secure a lease. So with fall quarter being up in the air, then a lot of my roommates would prefer to still live at home for fall quarter, but is it possible to secure a lease for like winter quarter this far in advance, or is there like a regular like time frame that we should begin looking for winter?
I'll start, which is that, under normal circumstances, I would say absolutely you should look now, and you can look now, and there's certainly no obligation as to when you have to do it by or when you have to do it, but generally the earlier the better. But the fact is, everything's so much in the air still, and there's still so many questions left to be answered that just nobody has. That I don't know if you need to do it as quickly. If it makes you feel more comfortable doing it, then go ahead. But I just don't see the urgency. And as I said before, I mean, there's no executive order, there's no law that says that you can terminate a lease early. So if you sign a 12-month lease tomorrow, and then it turns out that there's no classes in person in the fall, you're still bound by that lease. So that's what I would kind of suggest, that maybe you want to wait a little bit, but that's my 2 cents.
All right, so we have another question from the chat room, and they said, I moved out and my landlord says that depending on how clean it is, they may charge a cleaning fee. How does this affect my security deposit?
Yeah, so they absolutely have the right to do that, but only if it requires cleaning beyond how you found it in the first place. Another way to say that is, again, your responsibility is to leave the place as you found it. So it has to be just as clean on the day that you moved out as when you moved in. What I was saying previously about sort of the automatic cleaning fees is that some leases will say, it'll automatically cost you $150 to clean the place. And the fact is, a lot of places, of course, get professionally cleaned before you move in. But if you leave it just as clean as when you found it, you shouldn't have to pay anything. So what your landlord says is true, that depending upon how clean it is, they are allowed to charge a cleaning fee. But again, if you left the place just as clean as you found it, you shouldn't have to pay anything. Can you go on your own and hire a cleaning service? Yes, and again, if they clean it up to the level that it was when you moved in, you shouldn't have to pay. The landlord, I should say, right? If you yourself do the cleaning and it's just as clean when you move out as when you moved in, they shouldn't get to charge you anything.
Any other questions? We've got maybe a minute or two.
Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
It's a little bit unconnected to the housing conversation, but it is concerning the financial matter as well, and I was wondering if you have any guidance on that. So, according to current situation, I have a question about IRS, so the stimulus package, and what to do if you are not entitled but you received it. Are there any guidance you could help me with in terms of how to return it and how can I reach the services that were given me that? So yeah.
Wow, you got a stimulus check and you weren't entitled to it, which is the opposite of the problem that most people are facing right now. I wish I could give you specific advice, other than all I can suggest that you do is check in with the IRS website. Hopefully they have answers for you about that. I know that if you go to irs.gov/coronavirus, there's some information about the stimulus check. You can also call them. But yeah, beyond that, unfortunately, I'm just not really sure. I think I better leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyway, thank you very much.
All right, so we do have to wrap up. I'm going to move it ahead to Samantha, who's going to wrap up the program for those who are part of ILead. If you are not doing this for ILead, you're welcome to leave the Zoom meeting. Again, thank you so much to our basic needs, the hub interns and peer educators for doing this presentation, as well as to John Carlos from Student Legal Services. If you all have any other questions, feel free to send them over to their contact information that they've shared, or to zone@ucsd.edu if it's related to the zone. And go ahead and take it away, Samantha. Thank you.